Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for attending the policy meeting of November 3rd, 2022. Um, right now we don't have any attendees, so it just looks like it's just us board members and committee members. So we'll get started. Miss Danielle, would
Yes,
you like
ma'am.
to take over, please?
Okay, well, welcome to our November 3rd Policy Committee meeting. And on tonight's agenda, we'll be talking about 3 policies. And so without further ado, I always ground us in our purpose. I don't need to read it again, but it's always helpful to remind folks why we're doing what we're doing. So our first policy is the enrollment in district. So this policy basically just gives the foundation of how we enroll students into our school district. And we define school age according to the Department of Education. Students are considered school age from the earliest admission age of the district's educational programs, which for us is age 5 by September 1, until they reach the age of 21. And you have to be a resident of the district. So enrollment requirements. So there were some updates that I want to go over now. So a school-age student shall be entitled to attend the schools of the districts in residence according to the board policy, laws, and regulations. Yes. So this language here that's in blue actually comes straight from the enrollment basic education circular. And that is the document that guides enrollment in Pennsylvania. So this language is literally word for word copied right from the BEC, and it's, well, BEC, Basic Education Circular. So if you hear me say BEC, that's what I mean. And so proof of age. So what's required by law is proof of age, proof of immunizations, proof of residency, and then there's a parent registration statement. And do you need me to make this higher? Because I see squinting. Better. Okay, there we go.
Oh, bless your heart.
There we go. I saw squinting. I saw squinting. So I was like,
before you move on, though, can we go back just one more? There it is. Stop. Okay, so where it said in blue, provide that required the school. Okay, the school district must enroll non-resident children.
Yes, and permit them to attend school. I can explain that.
That's what I would like. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So non-resident students are those students who are in foster care, homeless. Those are really the ones, or they may be students who live in a district, but they attend an out-of-district placement, like with our special ed. They may be in a school that is somewhere else, but they actually do live in our residency. That's what the definition of non-resident student is. Mainly it's our homeless student.
Can we put that somewhere? Because
absolutely, we can explain what non-resident, actually we have a policy for non-resident students.
Right. I'm sure we do, but if somebody's looking at this and see that, and not go to looking at what does the policy say about residency, I don't want anybody just looking at this particular policy and go, well, you said in policy 200 that non-resident children can attend. So I don't know why, what's his name? Mr. Keith. I don't know why Mr. Keith coming knocking at my door about my non-residency. So I think we should really
we can explain that. And if anything, we can probably link it to the non-resident policies, which does go into more detail about who's a non-resident student, but it's mainly when a student is homeless. Right. And displaced.
Like I said, I know that. I know what it is. I'm just saying, why did they put that there and not an explanation? So I'm glad we're going to explain it. Thank you.
Yes, no problem. Ms. Hope, I saw your hand. Okay, go ahead.
Does that also apply and I can't tell if this is a rule yet or not regarding military families. We must take families with orders, even though
Mhm.
they might not live here, we
Mhm.
must let them be here.
Yes, that's actually in the enrollment back itself. It's not in our policy, it's in the back. So are you suggesting that we add that language?
I think that language is going to be mandated very soon.
Okay,
But
we can add that.
and I do have to say anecdotally, we lost a family from Lansdowne who moved to Westchester schools.
Mhm.
They took them before they even moved. They had a agreement of sale, and
Mhm.
they took those young folks. They did not provide transportation. Mom had to do that.
Mhm.
But they took them even before they moved.
And you can do that with a agreed,
And so again, thank you
documentation
all
of
for joining
sale.
our meeting. We switched up the agenda a little bit just to provide.
Oh, we can hear you, Joy.
That's not sure.
Oh, I wasn't sure who that was. Add language about military families. Yes, we can do that as well. So, and I'll show you how. So here, the proof of age, this is what the back says. It says that it can be a number of documents. Birth certificate, notarized copy of a birth certificate, baptismal certificate, copy of a record of baptism, notarized or duly certified and showing the date of birth, a notarized statement from parents or other relative indicating the date of birth, a valid passport, or prior school records showing the date of birth. So these are examples of things that parents can provide us to prove age. And that's the purpose, to prove age. Then you have immunizations, and that's kind of self-explanatory. We all know that the state has a whole document that lays out what immunizations are required for what grade levels and what ages. And then we have proof of residency. So proof of residency, they say, includes a deed, a lease, a current utility bill, credit card bill, property tax bill, registration, car registration, driver's license, Department of, I think that's Department of Transportation identification card. A district, now this is the key thing, a district may require more than one form of residency confirmation be provided. However, school districts and charter schools must be flexible in verifying residency and should consider the information is reasonable in light of the family situation. See paragraph about homeless. So that whole caveat is all around hardship. If they don't have documentation, they are homeless. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to have anything. This also comes into play for refugee families. So there are families that have different hardships that can't provide this. And that's why that language is there for flexibility.
Yeah, we had a family once that was a victim of domestic violence. Burnt all their records. And but should that say proof of residency for parent and guardian? Like, or is that just assumed? Because we're not asking.
So we're really asking for the proof of residency for the child. So it's the primary residence of the child. Where is this child primarily living?
So but a child wouldn't have a deed, a lease.
No, so it's you're acting as an agent of the child, as their parent,
Right.
guardian, and whoever, that you're saying that this is the primary residence of the child, and here is proof of that residency.
Right.
And then you have the parent registration statement. Now, this is included in our registration form. So a parent doesn't have to produce this. It's already in our form.
Right.
But in essence, it just says that the student has not committed an infraction, a serious infraction in another district, or is in the process of an expulsion due to a serious offense. This is just required by law.
Right. Ms. Stewart, if I can go back to number 3.
Yes.
Should that say primary residence somewheres? Right?
Well, I
Because-
mean, this is straight from the Department of Education's document. So I didn't really alter their document because this is like the Bible of enrollment in PA.
Yeah, it's just so, right, so if you see
So
two
we can provide
addresses-
clarity. I
Yeah,
think we can provide clarity.
yeah.
clarity
and
around
I would
primary residence.
suggest, But I know that we get hung up on primary residence a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, that sort of thing.
Language. Not a problem. We can add that.
And I think it's important for school board directors to know that once family, child,
And
It's-
so with that, did everyone have an opportunity to?
says the word homeless, we must
Mhm.
stop all question asking.
That is correct.
Not, you know.
Okay,
how long-
Abigail, are you gonna do your normal?
Can somebody, I'm not sure who it is, do you mute yourself? We can hear your background. Go ahead, Ms. Hoff.
No, we're good. I
Okay.
just want to be clear that as soon as a student says the word homeless or a
Mhm.
parent, all questions must cease.
Agreed. That is McKinney Vento. So the last one is the home language survey, which again is included on our registration form. And the purpose of this is for us to determine how we should best communicate with the family and to determine if the student needs English language learner supports. That's the whole purpose. So that is what's required by law. And as you see, 4 and 5 are actually done by the district. And 1 through 3 is really the burden of proof on behalf of the guardian of the child, unless there are circumstances of hardship. I'll continue. So here we have, this is the same language that we had before. That we're, you see here, we talk about the homeless students, where we say immediately enroll identified homeless students, even if the student, parent / guardian is unable to produce required documents in accordance to board policy, laws, and regulations. And that we are not allowed to ask for immigrant status, and enrollment requirements and procedures shall apply to non-resident students. And here we can provide that clarity again about what does that mean. Provide clarity. Alrighty, approved to attend other school districts in accordance to, now this is where we talk about our out of district placements. And then here we are about residency eligibility. When a parent, now this is when we get into those different situations around custody and divorced or separated families. And so this is actually our, yes, that was the correct information. We already had this in our policy. So it basically says that if you have shared custody of the child and it's evenly divided, and this is when it does become a little hairy, when it's evenly divided, literally 1 week child is with mom, 1 week child is with dad or whomever, right? The parents may choose which of the 2 school districts the student will enroll in for school. And if they're emancipated minor, the resident school district shall be the one in which the student is then living. So that's it. And then this last part about, this was just, and this is not from the back, this is not in Pennsylvania law. This is what was in our policy, but when I researched it, we haven't done this practice in years. And quite frankly, the thought was we don't have the capacity or the ability to actually enforce this. So it says in order to maintain accurate membership data, parents and guardians of all charter and cyber charter students will be required to verify their continued residency in the district annually. And that was right there the key. Each January by updating documentation required by the district enrollment process with the registration office at the administration building. So again, when I asked about this, I was told we don't do this, and we stopped the practice because we did not have the capacity to do it, nor was there a value add. Like, we weren't really getting anything out of it. It just, so that's why it was removed. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions, issues with policy 200? No? Okay. Okie dokie. Thank you for your feedback, and I will continue. Alrighty, this one's gonna be easy because
That document is not accessible to us from this document. It says I
Which
need to
one?
ask permission. To
Which
this one,
one?
201.
Oh, 201. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Hold
no
on.
problem.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know how it is with these links.
I know,
Links.
I know. It's
These links
hard.
drive you crazy sometimes. All right, so I'm gonna drop it in the chat just so you have quick access to it, but I'll
Yeah,
change it in the presentation too.
It's changed now.
Okie dokie. Oh, good. Okay, don't you just love Google? Alrighty, so this big time, fun times. So this one's easy. Admission of students. There actually weren't any changes. Really the only thing that changed is we took out so this is beginners are students entering the lowest grade of primary school above the kindergarten level. And it still remains the same, that the district establishes the district's entry age for beginners is 6 years old before the first day of September in accordance to state law. And the board is not required to admit as a beginner any child whose age is less than the district's established admission age for beginners. So beginners really they're referring to like the compulsory grade level of grade 1. Kindergarten, however, which is the next section, talks about that the board has established the district's entry age for kindergarten is 5 before the first day of September. And that is about it. Any questions about that?
Is there any flexibility in the age? Say, they were on August 31st. Can the district make that decision to say you're okay to enter school here?
Well, August 31st is before, so they're good there. But if we're talking about like September 2nd or that one day, which is always a issue and a concern. And so far, I can tell you from my experience of working in enrollment, no matter what cutoff you do, there's always going to be an exception. So, and so it's like, so where we have seen more success, at least, is being consistent with the policy, which is written, because no matter what you do, there's always going to be an exception. There will be. And so somebody's always going to be upset, unfortunately. But this is the standard, and it's the standard across all of our districts in the state.
Okay.
Yeah. But I will say, as a best practice, what I do, and I counsel parents on this one, I do let them know that unfortunately, as a steward of the district, I can't break board policy. I don't have that authority, but I do try to help them with finding other programs that may be in their community, because there are some kindergarten or pre-K sites that do kindergarten programming, because at the end of the day, the purpose is to make sure the child is ready for school. And so I do try to provide guidance around other resources or opportunities to keep the child engaged and learning and ready for first grade.
And Ms. Seward, if they
Mhm.
attend kindergarten somewhere else, they can go into first grade.
Yes, they can,
Right.
which is a great thing.
And truthfully, they could actually go into first grade anyway, even if they don't attend the first.
As long as they're 6 by September 1.
No.
Yep. So that's it. This is it for this policy. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Our last one is student discipline. I gave you something to really sink your teeth in today. So this one is an update from PSBA that I wanted to present. And so a lot of the changes in the policy are like word changes, as you can see, board finds instead of board recognizes. So I'm only going to focus on like the juicy parts where there's clarity. And one of the things I liked about the update on this policy is they did provide clarity on different terms or different situations, which I loved. So this line right here is my absolute favorite. The board shall approve the inclusion of restorative practices in the code of student conduct to address violations where applicable. And this is right in line with what we're doing with our district and in our code of conduct for this year, really trying to focus on referrals to SAP when there's a serious infraction. Now, of course, we're going to make sure that students are held accountable. Of course, there is, you have to have a consequence sometimes for, behavior that is becoming a student of William Penn. But we're trying to be more restorative rather than say, go home, go, So that's really close to my heart. And I was really delighted to see that language added. You'll also see, again, these are just like language changes that they did. But the next juicy part is they added on and off campus activities. So they kind of provided clarity around this section around when can you impose a consequence and when can you not? Or, under what conditions can you impose a consequence for behavior? So this policy, the code of conduct, apply to behaviors of students at all times during the time they are under the supervision of the school or at any time while on school property, while present in school sponsored activities, and while traveling to or from school and school sponsored activities, or at other times while riding in school provided means of transportation on campus. So, basically that's that door-to-door idea, the thought when you leave the door of your home, you're now under our supervision and we have to guarantee safety or ensure safety in some way. And when you leave our door and go back to your home, we're still held accountable for those behaviors that happen, but in that transition from home to school and school to home. Are there any questions about that?
So when you say from school, you're saying that to kids like they're going home. A fine example before I finish was, I think it was Friday evening. And from the middle school on the corner, not on the school property, there was a big fight. I mean, it was girls, hair flying, but anyway. So you wouldn't consider that to be under school to and fro?
That is considered while traveling to or from school.
So there could be consequences for that?
There could be.
Well,
that's what this language says.
Well, it must have been about 20 or 25 girls on that corner of Cedar Avenue.
I can imagine. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be easy to find out who it is, because our reach and our stretch can only go but so far. But when investigated, if it is founded and we have proof that a given child was a part of that, fight or that behavior, we can levy a consequence.
Okay.
Miss Danielle.
Yes, ma'am.
So, if a child is walking to school and there's some sort of negative experience between walking to school and school, is that punishable by us?
If the offender is one of our students,
Yeah.
yes, we can levy a consequence.
So let's take that one step further. Said student starts at Wawa, creates a fuss, and then continues on to school. Is that punishable by us?
It still says while traveling to or from school.
All right.
You're traveling to school. Yes, we can levy a consequence. So then they go into more detail because they do want to make sure we're clear. So the conduct involves threatens, or makes more likely violence, use of force, or other serious harm directed at students, staff, or school environment. So that's one definition, right?
You're
Then
gonna
we
have to
got-
change all the numbering, because that should not be two, that should be
Oh.
one.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Mhm.
It's hard sometimes when you're editing this stuff, you don't see it.
Understood.
And so the
And then
next one,
Three
they-
should be two.
So wait a minute, hold on. Oop. Wait a minute, I might have to fix this afterwards. Cause it's gonna like come out like that. But number 3 here is talking about the conduct materially and
Mhm.
substantially disrupts or interferes with the school environment or the educational process, such as school activities, school work, discipline, safety, and order on school property or at school functions. And then this one should be 4. And wait a minute, sorry. 4. I'll have to fix that later, but I'll make it blue so I know what
No,
to
that
do.
should be 3.
1, 2. Oh,
No, we
thank
don't
you.
have-
Thank you. Wait a minute. Delete. There we go. 3. Okay. So then we have 4 here. This is the conduct involves, they didn't change the language on this one. The
Right.
conduct involves the theft or vandalism of school property, or number 5 here. This is the proximity, timing, or motive for the conduct in question or other factors pertaining to the conduct otherwise establish a direct connection to attendance at school, to the school community, or to a school-sponsored activity. This would include, for example, but not limited to, conduct that would violate the Code of Student Conduct if it occurs in school, that is committed in furtherance of a plan made or agreed to in school, or acts of vandalism directed at the property of school staff because of their status as school staff. So that's a lot to unpack. And that's a lot of new language to unpack. And now that I'm reading it, I'm thinking we may have to go into some clarity for our, for folks with, that don't know these terms and what does that mean?
So,
I have to think on that.
yeah, I have a question. Does that mean you make a threat on social media, instigate a fight on social media? If we can prove that, number one, the threat is obvious, but if it is a fight, we have a fight and the person who instigated it made
There's a
some,
direct connection.
right, but
Yeah.
not maybe engaged in the fight on campus, maybe just instigated it, they would still be responsible in a
Yeah.
similar fashion.
Well, and that's still a direct connection because
Right.
it is
Right.
because of the actions of that person that it's like a cause and effect. I did this and it resulted in violence that happened in my school.
Yeah.
So it's that, I think that direct connection piece is like the key to that example that you gave. And like I said, sometimes that's not easy to even prove, social media, people can hide behind different usernames and things like that. But I mean, I'm glad the language is still there. in the off chance that we are able to prove that. I mean, we will do our due diligence to make sure we find out. Any other thoughts or questions about that?
One of the things that came to mind for me, and you might hear other talking in the background, is
Mhm.
weekend activity. So how, like, if you start some activities over the weekend and it comes back to school.
Now that I'm gonna ask David Kahn for,
That,
and that,
what-
because that's a good question.
It almost falls into mind when you talk about social media. You
Mhm.
have something direct to relate it back to.
Correct.
Maybe not on a.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if there's like somebody over the weekend instigates a fight and it comes into the school on Monday, right? That person who instigated, no matter when it happened, would be
Mhm.
responsible, you know, if we could if we could catch them.
Mhm.
But like for instance, band on the weekend, you're at a school activity, so all rules are applicable. You know, from a school event possibility.
And I,
But-
you know, and I think this part here kind of speaks to that. The proximity, timing is what we're talking about here. I said the comment over the weekend. So the proximity, timing, or motive for the conduct in question or other factors pertaining to the conduct otherwise established a direct connection to attendance at school, to the school community, or to school-sponsored activity. I think, I mean, like if I'm interpreting it right, and this is what I would want David Kahn to advise us on, if that interpretation is correct, that if the timing of the event happened over the weekend or, you know, outside of school hours, but we can establish a direct connection to the outcome being some form of safety violation or violence in our school, can we still give a consequence for that? Because I know that's a hot topic and has been litigated in other districts where, you know, students did, you know, horrible things on social media and the school gave a consequence.
Yeah, it's and litigation has ended in many different ways.
Yes, yes,
Right.
you're
So, but yeah, it's a question of it being provable, right?
Yeah.
Child A instigates a fight on Saturday,
Mhm.
comes in on Monday, that child's not engaged in the fight, but
Mhm.
the fightees say
Mhm.
child A pushed us on Saturday. And
Mhm.
proving that and penalizing that person is a challenge, right?
It is. But
And
believe me,
and
Mr. Ricards
oftentimes,
can tell you that.
yeah, and oftentimes this wording has not really held up in court, right?
Mhm.
Was that young person a female that made a threat on social media, a vague threat? The school tried to suspend her, and the courts were like, no, there's not, you can't draw a direct cause.
Mhm.
So,
And I think that's why that direct connection language is in there. Like, I think that's why they added that, because of those cases. Because I recall another case where some students did some racially charged stuff on social media, and the school levied consequences and they sued and they won. So yeah, you're right. Now, see, I held out hope. All right, hush, Coco. All righty. So I'll move on. The delegation of responsibility largely is still the same. And it just talks about how we, you know, have to make sure all of these regulations are in our code of student conduct, and they are. And then they just did some wording changing. They added at the end of this paragraph, in accordance with board policy, administrative regulations, and code of student conduct and school rules. So it's just like additional language to clarify. And then they just did a word change here. Let me see.
That reasonable force is hard.
Yes, it is.
One person's reasonable force is not another person's reasonable force.
Well, and that's where training comes in. Like
Right.
that is where training comes in, and that's why we have invested a lot in our, SSOs being able to, first of all, de-escalate before we get into anything physical, and the proper ways to disarm or, separate students who may be out of control fighting, things like that. So that's where training comes in. And that's why those policies that we reviewed last month or the month before, I can't remember now, talked about, what trainings our security staff have to have. So, I love making connections between policies. I get excited about that. But it's a good point.
Yep.
And so, here's the other part. So this one, in accordance with state law, the superintendent shall annually by July 31st report all new incidents to the Safe Schools on the required form, which we do, when a student's behavior indicates a threat to the safety of the student, other students, school employees, school facilities, the community, or others. District staff shall report the student to the threat assessment team in accordance with applicable law and board policy. Again, making that connection between the policy that we just reviewed around threat assessment teams, there's that correlation, that additional language to kind of connect those two efforts. And I am happy to share that we have made progress in the threat assessment teams. In fact, today I presented in front of the principals around the work that Mr. Ricards has been doing with our social workers and our counselors to establish threat assessment teams in schools. So go ahead.
So where does this policy mention weapon and drugs where those are out of our hands and mandated by the state for a 1-year expulsion? Like, does it draw a parallel there?
So we do see for reporting purposes, the term incident shall mean an instance involving an act of violence, possession of a weapon, the possession, use, or sale of a controlled substance or drug paraphernalia defined by the Pennsylvania Controlled Substance, Drug, Device, and Cosmetic Act. The possession, use, sale of alcohol or tobacco or conduct that constitutes offense listed in Safe Schools Act. So wait a minute. I'm looking here. Superintendent or designee shall immediately report required incidents and may report discretionary incidents committed by students on school property. So it really doesn't say like what consequence you have to give in this policy, but we do know under Safe Schools Act, we have to do a mandatory 1 year and police notification.
So this may get a little more complex. Lansdowne has on the books decriminalization of marijuana. So, and that's probably coming sooner than later.
When you say on the books, what do you mean? Are they like considering it?
No, they're considering it, yeah. So
okay.
like they have to have their first and second reading like we do. But so that may, right, you're asking a police officer to arrest someone for something that's not illegal in this community. I mean, even currently, they're not arresting folks. They write tickets. So that was the and I had another question, but it's
I'm wondering, based on what you just said, because this language around incidents and weapons and controlled substances is all based on Pennsylvania Controlled Substance, Drug, Device, and Cosmetics Act. So I'm wondering if are they also planning on making changes to the act? That's what I'm kind of wondering.
Yeah, I don't
This is
know.
a Pennsylvania law.
But it's also saying controlled substance. It didn't specify what that substance, that controlled substance is. So they're
Right.
keeping it very vague and very open so that because of language that is changing around the terminology of controlled substance, because we actually had this conversation. And I know you guys are going to sick of me talking about the convention, but I want y'all to know I'm very mad today that we're talking about this because they presented this Monday and my district didn't have it updated and everybody else's district did. So I was kind of like, ooh, but anyway, yeah, so they were saying that they were leaving it open because of the language of marijuana and it becoming
decriminalized. Yeah.
Right. So I wonder maybe because it is also decriminalized in Philadelphia, if their school district doesn't have language that we should look at to sort of compare, because that's a probably pretty similar situation. And my last question, if I got it, how does this, should this policy also say that the school board reviews safety issues once a year under executive session, that Act 44? Does it reference Act 44 at all? So
That's actually covered in another policy, that requirement that we're supposed to do the executive session debriefing around our safety reports and threat assessments and things like that. That's not covered in this one.
let's make sure we do that this year.
Oh yeah, we're definitely making sure we do that.
Yeah.
So here we go. Oh no, I already did that one, this part.
Mhm.
So that's it. That's it for that policy. So Ms. Joy, you got your wish, it's being updated. So that is actually all I have for you, although I do have something that I would love to share with you. Our policy project is continuing, and I have been working with my colleagues to develop a plan of action for this year. So I wanted to be able to share that with you. So wait a minute, I'm going to share my screen real quick. So being the ultra detailed person I am, you see.
Wait a minute, this got more detailed. It was not this detailed when we developed it. What the heck?
Well,
You had time on your hand, huh?
Now, when you deal with a project manager, it's gonna be super detailed.
Oh my word.
So for those who have not seen this before, last year I started with a plan of action of planning out how we're going to review policies and work with my colleagues on cabinet on, a timeline so that everybody can follow it. And so all my colleagues have access to this. And so this year I sat down with each one of my colleagues and said, okay, like you see Katie's in there right now. I said, okay, based on what you're working on that aligns to Focus Forward 2025, again, going back to that grounding statement in the presentation, tell me what policies we need to be looking at and updating, for this year. That was the question. So my colleagues and I sat down and looked at their plans of what they're working on. And so what you see here is a link to each one of their policies in Google so that they can make changes, and we'll have them in time for the various meetings of the policy committee. So like you see here, for next month, we have non-school organization groups with Pam and public relation objectives with Mary Agnew. So I just wanted to share this with you, let you know there is a plan. And the plan is actually flexible as well, because as you know, there's not really a warning when PSBA is going to come out with a new something. There's no pattern to when they release these things. So I also built in flexibility in here to be able to move things down or up. But I just wanted to share that there is a plan. And I also provided my colleagues with some guidance around how to update a policy. And I think you'll like this. So, you know, because they asked me for examples. So I was like, if you're going to delete, strike through and make it red. So Danielle is the kindest person in the world. And then if you want to add language, we have Danielle is the kindest and most generous person in the world. And then we have, if you want to ask a question or a comment or assign it to another person, Danielle is the kindest person in the world. And then the question is, are we sure about that? So these are some of the fun things we do as a team. And then I also provided them with a procedure template, so that if they, as a result of reviewing their policy, they see the need to create a procedure, I gave them a template for that as well. So just wanted to share again that, you know, there is a plan, there are supports in place, and we're moving forward. And with that, Miss Hopkins, I turn it back over to you.
Ms. Seward, can you please provide documentation to the policy committee, your document, just so that they can be abreast of when these documents are coming, and then maybe give them, you know, some heads up of when what we're gonna, you know, work on next. So that
I would be super happy to do that. I'll actually add it as a slide in the presentation.
Bless your little heart.
May I ask if, I know at one of our business meeting, a parent was concerned about the dress code. Are we going to revisit the dress code? I'm thinking of that because of what happened to one of our neighboring school district this past week. So I don't know if the hoodies are forbidden. I don't know what policy number that is for the dress code.
Yeah,
Are
they are not forbidden.
They're not forbidden, Ms. Luella, and also,
but I thought it was with the sweatshirt and not the hoodie part that they could wear, and not the hoodie. So, but the hoodie is not forbidden.
It is not.
Okay.
No, they're not to have their hoods on during the school day as a matter of safety. Right, you can't see right to left, or it impairs your hearing. But we made peace with our children, our young people, over hoodies years ago. And that other neighboring school district has since reversed their policy.
I know.
So we don't have that in our dress code for the high school is very minimal. No rip, no skin, no heels, no slippers. It's mostly safety related.
and who, never mind.
What?
Nah, I forgot we were on camera.
But I don't think, I think it was a parent. I don't think she was, I think it was
And
elementary
it was,
school
and
that
you,
she was concerned about.
you were absolutely right, Ms. Luella. There was a parent and she was discussing the wearing of uniforms.
Oh, okay.
And I
That's
think
where-
if I remember correctly, that was about elementary school wearing
Yeah.
uniforms.
Yes. Yes.
So I think, you know, right now, since we're getting, I think, and this is my opinion, and people can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the issue is that us returning back into the school system after COVID and how much of a burden, monetary burden it was to have to purchase uniforms. But I think that the outreach that you're doing, Miss Luella, regarding um, the uniforms, and I know when you were over at Walnut Lane and giving, basically giving them away. I
Yeah.
think if we, I mean, I think it was $1. I think if I remember.
Or donation, or if they need them, they can get them free.
Right. So I think, and I could be wrong. Again, anybody wants to chime in, let me know. I think we need to keep status quo just the way it is. And, if families feel like they need that support from us, then, reach out either to you or Miss Boykins, the president or the superintendent or the principals of their particular school, on how we can support them as a board and as a school district. But I think we need to, remain status quo and keep our policies written as such until, we get more voice, regarding those school uniforms. That's just
I
me.
know there was some talk, actually I spent a little bit of time yesterday with the middle school principal and just riding that line where their same issues with whether you can afford the uniforms, but trying to be a little bit more flexible to not ride or make that be your focus for why kids can't come to school, to be a deterrent. So there's that flexibility, and they seem to be handling it very well. So
Yeah. I do think, because we did say it in a public meeting, that we would look into it. I would be interested in hearing feedback from the principals about what they think about the uniform policy, just as some sort of action to take. Because that may or may not, just give us some valuable insight. And then, there's other, as Dr. Peacoat says, other stakeholders that, maybe when we do a survey of parents, we have a question about uniform, just to start collecting data, in a long look sort of way. I do appreciate the uniforms, K-8. I do appreciate their flexibility. We used to have boy versus girl, and I believe we've taken that out because that's not appropriate any longer. We've opened up all the colors, right? Every school used to have a different color. We've gotten away from that. So I do think it's incredibly flexible, but does keep a little bit of focus on some sort of commonality, let's say.
Oh, you're muted, Ms. Hopkins. And you're still muted. And you're still muted.
she says she doesn't know why.
Oh, okay.
I think if you push the ask to unmute.
There you go.
Okay. So do you want me to reach out to the principals or Ms. Seward, or you'll do it? Okay.
I got that one.
Okay. All right. Let me see. Let me just check, make sure. I don't see anything in the chat from our attendees. I don't see anything in Q&A from our attendees. So does anyone else have any questions, any comments, any love? We love plenty of love. So do anybody have any love, anything? Yep, there you go, Miss Val. There you go. All right. So, all right, Miss Seward.
Joy,
Yay.
just a really good job getting us to go through these policies, and thank you, Miss Seward, for your support.
Yes,
Joy, great,
absolutely.
great
Oh,
leadership.
thank you so much. I really enjoyed this time with you.
These
You
are,
know,
I
It
think Miss Seward and I
shows.
have too much fun on policies. So,
Well,
yeah.
hey, we've really changed the look of policies. It is not a boring thing, but I think the magic of this meeting is that it's the board and we are collaborating, we're talking through ideas. I mean, it's really kinetic, and I just love how we, do this work together. So it's an honor.
Absolutely. Our next meeting, did you put our next meeting on the?
Yes, I did, December
Okay.
1st.
All right, good job. All right,
Oh,
so,
and I have one more thing.
yes, ma'am.
One of the attendees is actually my assistant, Jennifer Austin, and I would like to wish her a happy birthday. It's
Do you have
coming
her
up.
on here on her birthday?
Uh-huh.
Do you have her on here on her birthday?
She chose this.
Jennifer, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
And congrats, her
Awesome.
daughter is about to give birth to her grandson.
What?
Yes.
Grandkids are
So
the
she has a
best.
lot going on.
And
So I just want
Jennifer,
to
you
say
don't
thank
know
you,
enough to be a
Jennifer, for all that
grandma.
you do. You are amazing.
Oh, that is so wonderful. And the babies, do
Grandkids are
we
the
know when the
best.
babies do?
Soon, I believe her daughter is already like dilating. Like we're like
Nice.
in progress.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
So this is
Jennifer,
exciting
you don't
time
look
for Miss
old enough to
Austin.
be a grandma.
Awesome.
So I just wanted to end on a positive note and express gratitude to those who I work with.
Absolutely,
you.
Good,
absolutely.
good.
So again, don't forget to give us a copy, the committee, a copy of your,
It's already in the presentation for you.
oh man, I can't stand you. You too fast. And everyone, thank you for attending this evening. Appreciate you taking time out to, enjoy policy with me and Ms. Seward and the committee. And I bid you all good night and see you on the 1st of December.
Go
All right,
Phillies.
good night.
Let's go.
Go
Eagles.
Phillies.